Support comes from St. Louis Public Library Foundation, helping the library serve children and their families with programs and services needed to become lifelong readers. More information about the foundation is at slpl.org.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha.
Eventually, the RFT site is going to tank.
Quote, former owner Chris Keating sold a beloved alt weekly to a bunch of slimy tech dorks who have no interest in St. Louis or journalism.
I want to know what they were thinking, what the game plan was from the very start, and what's the game plan now that it seems not to have worked out.
In May, the St. Louis journalism world was rocked by the sudden sale of the Riverfront Times. The owner of the alt weekly, Chris Keating, and his Big Blue Media Group had sold the paper to an undisclosed buyer. The RFT's journalists were also informed that day that the new owners had no place for them. It's been about 4 months since the sale, which ended a 46-year run for the paper, and we now have some answers as to who bought the Riverfront Times. St. Louis Public Radio has dug into incorporation documents, lawsuit filings, and more, all of which points to RSC Ventures, an out-of-town company that's leveraging the Riverfront Times' online reputation to fund a link farming business. Here to explain is STLPR's digital editor, Jessica Rogen, who, we should note, was the managing editor of the RFT until it was sold in May. Jessica, welcome back to St. Louis on the Air.
Thanks for having me.
So on August 1st, which was about 2.5 months after the Riverfront Times was sold, a clue about who the buyer was emerged. What was that clue, Jessica?
So until August 1st, there had been no news about what was going to happen with the Riverfront Times other than it wasn't publishing and the staff was laid off. No idea about who might be running the new operation. But on August 1st, from the RFT's X account, a new executive editor introduced himself as J.D. Davis, and he went on kind of a wild Twitter thread, or X thread, about his plan to save the paper. He had some criticisms of its negative journalism in the past, and he talked about how he was going to fund it, which was mostly creating articles about OnlyFans and removing the advertising banners from the site. He said that he could, pay for the whole operation, just based on OnlyFans articles. Mm-hmm. And getting his name out there sort of let a whole host of different journalists kind of begin to track down, who is this guy? Where has he been? And it came out very quickly that he had a Texas connection. And in the past, St. Louis Public Radio uncovered that he had a connection to a company called FanFox, which is an OnlyFans marketing company located in a suburb of San Antonio. So once I had his name and Texas, I was able to look on Texas Secretary of State office for any business filings, and I found out that just a few days before the sale of the RFT was announced that he had filed for an LLC called RSC Ventures. Mm-hmm.
So along with J.D. Davis, you also came across 2 other people. Jessica, who are they and how are they involved in this trail that you'd uncovered?
Yeah, so more exciting filings on the RSC Ventures, Texas Secretary of State, registration. I could see that there was another LLC called Ready Set Cam listed as its management, and the management of that company was a guy named Max Anderson and his partner, Stephanie Adams. That led me to a whole host of businesses owned by Anderson that had to do with marketing OnlyFans creators.
Mm-hmm. Now, OnlyFans, before we continue, what is OnlyFans?
Yeah, so OnlyFans is an online platform where, an individual creator, an individual person can put out, whatever kind of content they want straight to subscribers who pay for it. The thing is, though, that it's become incredibly popular with people creating X-rated content. And so, OnlyFans is mostly porn.
Mm-hmm. And this is related to the Riverfront Times. In what way?
So alt weeklies, including the Riverfront Times, have a long tradition of paying for the journalism with advertising of sex workers.
Mm-hmm.
Just it used to be in the back pages of the magazine, and these ads became known as back page ads.
Mm-hmm.
And previous RFT owners were two founders of a website that competed with Craigslist called Backpage that became very, very popular with sex workers because it was a safe way to, advertise their services, no pimps, and it eventually got shut down. So the paying of journalism from sex worker ads, nothing new, but what happened with the RFT sort of changed forms because in the last few months of the paper, there became a sort of wave of sponsored content placed there by companies.
And that sponsored content then is how the businesses are making money.
That's right. So lots of different ways to make money off it. But what was happening is that one of Anderson's businesses, or several of Anderson's businesses, involved creators from OnlyFans paying him to, market their work by creating best of articles, which he would then place on sites like the RFT.
The RFT. So if we take a step back here, Jessica, J.D. Davis and Stephanie Adams, whose names you mentioned earlier, these two have modest online presences. By comparison, not just to them, but I mean, if you just look at what has happened around Max Anderson, this person has really put himself out there. What is it that you were able to learn about him?
Yeah, so Max Anderson has quite an online presence. He has an Instagram portraying himself in this like glamorous travel lifestyle. He's done interviews on podcasts. He's got a robust Twitter. And there was one podcast he did where he really laid out his life story and his business is called the Damn Good Day podcast. About 2 years ago, he went on and he explained sort of his life story, which was, a Washington State native. He was going to college when he wandered into a career fair, met some ex-Google employees who were beginning a new company called Porch. Mm-hmm. And he ultimately says he dropped out of college to join the startup, worked his way up through the ranks, and then got into tech entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. So something that you also did, you sought some comment from J.D. Davis and Max Anderson. You didn't hear any response from them. The former RFT owner, Chris Keating, I understand too, declined to comment for this story. Now, Daniel Hill, who's the former RFT editor at large, he posted on X this morning, quote, "This is confirmation of the theory I posted last month that the RFT is now just a front for a Texas-based OnlyFans PR operation. Former owner Chris Keating sold a beloved alt weekly to a bunch of slimy tech dorks who have no interest in St. Louis or journalism. Between that and the fact he's now running Sauce magazine into the ground, I don't think it's controversial to say the St. Louis area would be far better off if Chris Keating packed up and shipped out before he does even more damage, unquote. Jessica, what questions do you still have now that your reporting has been published?
I have a lot of questions for the new owners. I want to know what they were thinking, what the game plan was from the very start. There are other alt weeklies that have sort of stripped down and are running similar sponsored content ads or sponsored content articles, but still maintained a few local journalists to make sure that the websites continue to run and continue to draw people in. But Davis and crew, have not done that. And so, eventually the RFT site is going to tank. What were they thinking, and what's the game plan now that it seems not to have worked out?
Yeah. So we mentioned at the beginning, Jessica, that you were the former managing editor of the RFT. And after all this reporting work, what are you left feeling?
I feel kind of bleak about it, to be honest. I think it really drove home to me that the RFT is gone forever. Mm-hmm. And I have, I'm sad about that. And I also, feel sad for the state of local journalism. You never like when a publication goes under.
Yeah. Jessica Rogen is St. Louis Public Radio's digital editor. You can read her story about the suspected new owners of the Riverfront Times at STLPR.org. Jessica, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Today's episode was produced by our executive producer, Alex Hoyer.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.